Hi, I'm David Bonior. I'm John Edwards' National Campaign Manager. And I want to thank everybody for submitting your questions in this campaign. John Edwards wants everybody to have their questions answered. And some of them he can't get to at the town hall meetings. There's only so much time and so many questions you can answer. But if he's made very clear at the town hall meetings, if you have a question or a comment, please send it to us, and we'll try to respond with an answer or comment in turn. So thank you. Keep them coming. We want to make sure that the reason people vote for John Edwards is because he's got the best issue base, issue frame in this campaign. And I'm confident you feel the same way. Let's take some of the questions now that were sent in to us. This is from Holly from Exeter, and she asked, I've heard a lot of talk about the middle class, but what does John Edwards plan to do for the working poor? I'm part of that class. I work full-time, I go to school full-time for nursing. I live paycheck to paycheck, yet I do not qualify for programs such as assistance with oil, discount medical, etc. What would John Edwards do for people like me? Well, Holly, there are a number of things John Edwards wants to do. First of all, you mentioned in your question, what will he do for working poor? We don't believe in the John Edwards campaign, and John certainly doesn't believe that the two words working poor should go together. If you're working, you should not be poor. You should be receiving a decent wage, you should have health care, you should have pension and retirement benefits, and in the immediate effect, John Edwards will do the following things for folks in your situation and for people in the working class in this country. Number one, we're going to have universal health care. Universal health care for everyone in this country. That's 47 million people without health care. They're going to get it under John Edwards' universal health care plan, the first campaign plan in this campaign for the presidency, and the one that other candidates have actually copied. That will provide medical, physical. It will be paid for through a tax for those who make $200,000 a year or more. We'll get rid of the tax cuts that George Bush provided the very wealthiest in our society today, so we can pay for this for those working folks in our country. So that's one thing that will happen under John Edwards. Another thing that will happen is we will make sure under John Edwards' program that, for instance, the tax cuts in this country go to people like yourself. We'll have an increase in the earned income tax credit that will help many people who are termed working poor. We will also have a savings tax benefit, so if you put so much in savings, we will match that savings if you fall within a certain income guideline. Right now, as you probably know, Holly, the folks, the 300,000 top people in this country with incomes have as much income as the bottom 150 million. And most of the tax benefits over these past 8 years have been going to the people at the very, very top. They're the ones who've gotten all the benefits. And we're going to turn that around and make sure that working families in this country get the break that they so justly deserve in our tax system. So that's another piece of support that we're going to provide people in the situation, economic situations that you find yourself in. And in terms of education, you mentioned you were going to nursing school. John Edwards has a program called College for Everyone that he wants to expand into a 4-year program that will help you. Since you're already working, this would provide free tuition and free books. Free tuition and free books, and that will make a big difference in your life as well. So those are just a couple of the examples of the difference a John Edwards presidency can make for you and for your family and for your friends. The next question is Dennis from Londonderry asks, what do you think about repealing the Patriot Act? As far as I can see, this was made in violation of the Constitution, and how would you be able to stop all the lobbying in Washington without making it illegal? Well, the question, let me take the last part first. The question of lobbying is a very serious one in this campaign. John Edwards wants to make sure that the people are heard and not have Washington ruled by the lobbyists in our democratic system today. And that's basically what we have. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of lobbyists in Washington, D.C. They're everywhere. I served there 26 years in the Congress, and I can tell you they pretty much run the place. They're the people that are keeping us from having a good energy proposal. John Edwards has spoke eloquently on this. These are the same people, the lobbyists, who have kept us from having universal health care. The lobbyists from the pharmaceutical industries, the health insurance industries have stopped universal health care, and we need that to keep the cost of health care down and provide health care for 47 million people. So what do you do about that? Well, under our Constitution, people are free and encouraged to some extent to seek out the support of their legislators, senators, congressmen and women, lobby them if you will. But what we want to do in the John Edwards campaign, what John Edwards wants to do is break that link between lobbyists and then giving money to people after they visited them and talked to them about the issue. That's a very insidious and it's a very corrupting and corroding way to operate a government, and it's gotten way out of hand in this country today. So lobby, make your issues clear and what you're for and what your organization's for, fine, but not with a check that follows up the next day or the same day. We don't believe that that's the best for American democracy today and the best for the American people, and we're going to break that. And so that's one part of your question. The second was the repealing the Patriot Act. Well, the Patriot Act really has stepped on much of the constitutional provisions in our government today. It's really not given a person a fair shake in our courts. It's allowed people to be wiretappings of innocent civilians and citizens in our country. It's just taken away a lot of rights of Americans, and we have to protect those rights. That's what people fought for in the wars of our nation over the period of the last 200 plus years. And those rights of certain liberties, of the right to free speech, the right to association, the right to the right not to be incarcerated without proper counsel. These are very important rights, and a lot of that was violated in the Patriot Act, and John Edwards would correct that. All right, the third question comes from Elizabeth from Exeter, and she asks, I was at the John Edwards house party on September 8th, and John Edwards mentioned that he would, quote, ask Americans to sacrifice. I'd like to know, one, what sacrifices he would ask of Americans. Number two, how would he lead by example? Number three, what would he do to ensure that he would be more successful than former President Carter during the energy crisis when he asked Americans to sacrifice? All right, good questions. Let's take the first one first. What sacrifices would he ask of Americans? Well, I think John Edwards certainly in the area of energy and would be very much interested in making sure that people conserve in their homes. Change your light bulbs, for instance. Weatherize your homes. Drive an automobile that's fuel efficient. John and Elizabeth just went out and got a Ford hybrid. And they have that now, and that's they believe a step in the right direction. They don't pretend that they're perfect on these issues. They're learning as well as the rest of us, but they believe that, as Gandhi said, be the change. If you want the change to happen, you've got to be the change. So they've done that. Secondly, how would he lead by example? Well, I just mentioned one example, the automobile. Is a good example of John leading. He also took Elizabeth and their children up to Scranton, Pennsylvania with a one-core project, and what he was able to do with that project is help winterize a home for an elderly couple up in Scranton, Pennsylvania. And they spent a good part of the half of the day putting tape and insulation on pipes and in this home. He's also, of course, many people know that he's been down to New Orleans and helped build homes for the folks who suffered after the hurricane devastated New Orleans and the Gulf Coast. He brought 700 students down there to do that on their spring break. So he's made a number of personal sacrifices, and he knows, John Edwards, that by personal example and leading, you can make a big difference in this country. And the third piece of that question was, what would he do to ensure that he would be more successful than former President Carter during the energy crisis when he asked Americans to sacrifice? Well, President Carter really raised this issue of energy, to his credit, many years ago. And what John Edwards has done is he's gone around the country and practiced this personally at his home in New Orleans, in Scranton, Pennsylvania, and many other places where he has led by example, building upon the work that President Carter initiated in the 1970s, talking about and leading on the area, for instance, of global warming, offering the best and the first solution on energy and global warming when he came out with his proposal to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by the year 2050. So he's not only offered ideas and solutions, bold ideas, transformational ideas, big solutions, but he's also lived by them by example. So let's go to another question here. This is from Norman from Newcastle. And Norman asked, I was one of those persons who naively thought that a president and a Congress of the same party would actually be a good thing, that much could and would be accomplished. However, that has rarely proven the case during the first 6 years of the Bush administration. If John was president, how would he improve the relationship between the executive and legislative branches? Well, you know, I'll tell you a little story, Norman. When I was in the Congress back in 1993, we had a great year in 1992. We elected a Democratic president, Bill Clinton. We elected a Democratic House and a Democratic Senate. And we thought we were in a position, as a result of that, to pass the national health care plan that the country had yearned for so many years, so we could be more competitive business-wise, especially in the auto industry, which, you know, has a $1,600 per car cost, and compare that with what they do in Canada and Germany and Japan, where they have national health insurance, and we're way behind the 8 ball just starting off. So it would help us business-wise. It would help the literally tens of millions of people who don't have health insurance get insurance. It would keep costs down. All this we had hoped for. This dream of national health insurance for everyone, universal health care, and it didn't happen. And one of the reasons it didn't happen is because it was done in secret by the Clinton administration. It was put together in secret without anybody knowing it. They didn't elicit the help of the American people, or even, for that matter, the members of Congress. What John Edwards will do is he will listen to the members of Congress who represent the people, and he will also rally the people in the country to get it done quickly. We want this done in the first year, in the first 6 months. And John Edwards has said, and I support him 100% on this, if we don't get national health insurance in 6 months, then the Congress, the Cabinet, the President and Vice President, and everybody else should not have their health insurance from the government. If it's good enough for them, it's good enough for the American people. So that's the challenge, and that's that he's offered, and that's the determination that he has to make sure that this gets done. Okay, number 5, question from James from Alton Bay. James says, MSM, a corporation based, is afraid of John Edwards. MSM will attack him based on limited foreign policy experience. How will John respond to well-constructed attacks on his foreign policy? Well, you know, John Edwards was the vice presidential candidate for the Democratic Party in 2004. John Edwards also spent 6 years in the United States Senate. And after his Senate career, he spent a good deal of time abroad learning about the world situation, meeting with world leaders, looking and seeing firsthand of the problems of poverty and deprivation in places like Africa and in India where he's traveled. He co-chaired with Jack Kemp a Foreign Relations Committee that dealt with U.S.-Russian relationships. As I said, he's been to India, he's been to Africa. He spent a good deal of time working on issues relative to peace in the Middle East. He cares very deeply about the world situation and how important restoring U.S.'s moral standing in the world today. That's why he's offered a very comprehensive counterterrorism plan. It's called CITO, C-I-T-O, the Counterterrorism Intelligence Treaty Organization, which would bring together different countries and to work on the question of laundering money from visa terror groups, to making sure that they work together to capture and hunt down those who are trying to destroy our way of life and harm our citizens. He's also suggested, and I think very correctly and very early in this campaign, that number one, that we should take away the option for young people who are in developing countries in the Muslim world, in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa, take away that option from joining terrorist organizations or sympathizing with them by providing them with education and health in their early years. In many of these countries, of course, we know there is no public health program, or very little public health programs or educational opportunities for young people today. So without any hope, that provides a huge portal, a huge opening for terrorist organizations to recruit. We can restore our moral leadership by helping and providing that kind of support for young families around the world today. Harvey from Merrimack asked, my wife and I attended an Edwardstown meeting in August, and you said that you were for paid college for everyone. Do you believe that everyone should go to and graduate from college? Who's going to pay for this? Well, the program that John Edwards referred to is his College for Everyone program. He started it and helped finance it in Greene County in eastern North Carolina. It's been in operation, I think, about 3 years now. And we've had a lot of success with it. It's only for the first year, but we've seen an increase, I believe, of 25 or 30% in Greene County, the number of young people who have gone to college as a result of that. And as I said earlier, it's paid for. You get your tuition and your books paid for if you, in fact, work 10 hours a week. And a little work never hurt anybody, and it's a really helpful way to move forward and get your education paid for. So the question, I guess, from Harvey was, well, should everyone go to college, graduate from college? Well, of course, not everyone should or wants to go to college, and there are many opportunities in other fields for young individuals to get the proper training to get a good job and have a good living. There are wonderful apprentice programs that are offered by the labor unions throughout this country. Some of the best workers in this country, of course, are labor union workers because they get apprentice school type of training. And these apprentice programs that the plumbers and the carpenters and the laborers and the iron workers, and I can just go on and on, are fabulous programs. And you know, you have to work at it, you have to study, you get an apprentice card, and then finally you get a journeyman's card once you've demonstrated the capacity to do the job and do it well. It's often why union work is oftentimes the best quality work that you can have. So yes, there are people that will take that option. There are others will maybe want to serve their country and not go to college right away, go serve in the military and then earn the credits from serving in the military to get their college basically paid for. In fact, I'm a good example of that. When I was in the Air Force in 1968, 72, I went to, at night after my duty in California, I went to night school and got my graduate degree there. And there are many others who got their undergraduate degree the same way. So there are different ways to do this. Go to college, not go to college, get into good training programs. College, of course, isn't for everyone, but the college system in our country offers so many opportunities and so many varied opportunities that people really need to look at it and take opportunities, the opportunity to avail themselves of those opportunities at their community college or their four-year institutions. This is from Steve from Merrimack. What does John Edwards think of the fact that Romney will end capital gains, dividends, and interest taxes on individuals with less than $200,000 a year? Well, what John Edwards wants to do is to make sure that those who have very high incomes, those who are over $250,000 a year, I believe, will have their capital gains at a rate that was at the level when George Bush came into office, was just 28%. Right now it's down to 15%. And he has provided a series of other tax reductions for people who make less than $200,000 a year. I talked about the savings match provision on the tax bill that he's going to submit, which will provide people of moderate and lower incomes a match on their savings so that they can begin to create capital for themselves and their families. John Edwards also is a very strong proponent of the earned income tax credit and expanding that as well, and providing other tax benefits for daycare and education for our young people and their families. So I thank you. Enjoyed being with you today. Hope we answered some of your questions. Bye-bye.